Do you struggle trusting the measurements on your projects? Well, in this build, the measurements took my anxiety levels to the max. The measurements were done by my client and I couldn't check them, nor could I offer my workpiece up against an actual object to check I was on the right lines. I just had to trust them and me. And that's a lot. Did the final product fit? How did I deal with that pressure? And, as I find out, is the customer always right? For this project, the customer had chosen some Marante. It's a beautiful looking wood that's neither light nor dark, but comes up with a sublime finish. I came away from our local woodyard with two huge pieces, and this needed a bit of resawing. Luckily for me, my new Evolution table saw made light work of it and left a real neat finish, only requiring a couple of quick buzzes through the planer to make it silky smooth. Now, having a wood muncher like this is absolutely fantastic, and I can't believe how many small workshops I see persevering without one. If you can make your shop work for you and earn a few pennies, then it's well worth the investment back into your workshop. Tools don't make you better, but it makes processes easier. With the timber all milled up nicely, it's time to move on to checking how we want this board to look. It's really important here that we take considerations into how the grain patterns are, what board's going to look good next to which one, and is there any sort of colour differences. Once I've done this, I like to mark on by drawing a big triangle, mainly for no other reason than everyone else does it on YouTube. But joking aside, I don't like to use numbers. To help me with jointing, I've started numbering the sides of the board 1 and 2, meaning that number 1 goes through the left hand side of the table saw and number 2 goes through the right. That means that you get a perfect joint every time. So the last thing I want is multiple numbers, because a simple nugget like me will easily get lost. Now, I spoke earlier about pressure. This isn't the only way that I reduce it, but this is one of the ways. Glue ups are so stressful, but if you can ensure that you've got nice crisp lines that meet perfectly, it takes away 10-15% of the stress that comes out of those glue ups. So that's just one tip that I'm going to look at during the course of this video. Now, this is where the triangle that we marked on earlier is really useful. It makes sure that I get my board back in the correct order now that I've made some cuts. A very loose clamping and a quick check with a straight edge shows just how neat these joins are. These are lovely and crisp and should glue up really well. But to make sure that we do get perfect alignment, I'm going to add some biscuits to this build. It's going to hold a little bit of weight being a sink cover, so I have to ensure that there's going to be no bend or flex. For this, I'm going to use some biscuits. They don't add any structural strength, but they are going to make sure that my alignment is bob on for glue up. I've got my own little template that I've made on my laser, and I'm going to use my palm router with a slot cutting bit. This is lovely and quick, and it took me about 10 minutes to do all the joints in total. You simply run the router through the jig, going from side to side, turn your router off, move your clamps and repeat. And again, this is another way that I reduce that pressure. Things like biscuits that help with alignment stop slips and slides during glue ups and things coming out of kilter. Little jigs and techniques like this are worth their weight in gold. The cost of the bit was about £3, and the jig I've made myself from some scrap. And it's these little changes to my workflows that are paying off so well. It's making my work look like it's at the next level, whilst also making things easier. So after a quick dry fit, it's onto the glue up. I like to push all 4 boards together, gives you a bigger surface area, stops glue slipping out all over them faces. There's no point going to all that trouble planing to have to do tons of sanding later. Another way I'm stopping the stress is by working smarter, not harder, not repeating steps or making problems for myself further down the line. And I'll happily tell you, I've been my own worst enemy at times, making things harder than they need to be. Now, so far so good with this glue up. Time to add the clamps, and if I'm honest, this is the only pressure that there should be in woodworking. That was horrific, I know, but hopefully the glue joints won't be. So let's see as we come out of clamps now what they're actually looking like. And I'm absolutely amazed at how flat and smooth this is. This has been a fantastic glue up. Now no sooner are we out of the clamps and it's time to trim to its final dimensions. We've already got the width sorted with the table saw, and now it's onto the DIY track saw to cut the bottom and the top. If you're not in a position to buy a track saw yet, this is a fantastic alternate. It's not perfect, but compared to the stress of freehanding, it's another great way of reducing down the burden on these builds. Sadly, mine doesn't get all the way through, and I thought the best way to show you this was with a hairy elbow. If you look at that thing go, it'll magically make that cut a little bit deeper. Or maybe it's just that saw I'm holding, and I need to work on the camera angles. Either which way, it's going to get through it nice and easy. Everyone's favourite task now, it's sanding. For this, I like to draw on with my red pen. Makes it nice and easy to see how much material I've taken off and how much I've got to go. What I will say for sanding is it's a little bit easier now that we're coming out of the winter and I've got the sun on my back. But this is where the pressure really ramped up, because my client has asked for some very specific cuts in this sink board. I'm really worried on this one. Like I said at the beginning, I've not done the measurements, they have. Are they right? Are we both talking about the same left and the same right? Because this thing's not bang in the middle. After a little bit of back and forth, I'm as happy as I can be, but I'm nervous. But I've got to get going, because if I don't get it finished, I don't get paid. One thing I do know for sure is if I can make a jig for this hole, I will take out some of the stress, because I can get that jig right first before I make a cut on my actual board. Just another way to reduce the pressure, because once you cut into this thing, you can't add it back on. So after applying the template, I've drilled a pilot hole, and now I'm on with my hole cutter. This is great for the sides. It's going to leave 2 or 3 mil at each side, so I've only got a tiny little smidgen to route off. The closer you can get to that line without touching it, the easier this process becomes. But as a word of caution, don't go over the line, because it makes it impossible to come back from. I know, I've done it, and you're right, that did add pressure. Thankfully, I've not done that on this build, and after the hole's been cut, I just need to take the straight pieces out, and we have the majority of the material hogged out. As you've just seen, I've set the router to the right depth. I'm using a compression bit that's got an up and a down cut to make sure that I get a perfectly crisp cut. This bit works by running the bearing against the template, making sure that the cut is absolutely flush and to the exact dimensions that we need. Again, another way that I'm keeping my anxiety and stress levels down is by making sure that I use the tools around me to make the job as easy as possible. Now the next part of this build also needs a template, but I'm going to do this one different and use some scraps of MDF. I need to measure out how big my hand is, because this is going to mark out where the hand holes go. I'm then going to use the router to run along the top of those MDF pieces, and this will give us a controlled, defined area that gets cut out by the router bit. So once the measurements are transferred onto the board and I'm happy that everything is squared and central, I'm going to use the chop saw to chop up some MDF, some double-sided tape yet again, and it's going to be a quick and simple jig. So for this cut, I'm changing to my fixed base router. That's because I need a little bit more control, and the 2 chunky handles give me just that. It allows me to counterbalance the router as it's gliding over the top of the jig. To ensure that I get a clean, crisp cut, I'm going to make this in 2 passes. The first pass is going to hog out the vast majority of the material. The second pass is going to be really shallow and will clean everything up nicely. After I've finished routing, it's on to sanding, and this is where I find that an oscillating multi-tool comes into its own. It's these little jobs that no other tool gets into that makes these things so versatile and so worth the money. So we're on to the home straight and we're adding the feet. Another little jig that I've used here is a marking guide for little rubber feet. It's simply got a couple of positive stops and slips over the corners. I can then take the feet and the little screws that come with it and screw them easily into the pilot holes. Now I've got to put my hands up to this one because I have deleted the footage of me putting the finish on, which is gutting because this thing looks so beautiful. Luckily for me, my client has kindly sent me through some pictures of it in situ. I'll show you them shortly. And this just leaves one question unanswered. Did this fit? Were our measurements right? And did we both start and finish at the same point to know our lefts and rights? Well, I'm glad to say it did. And I've got some pictures back from the client. This thing looks amazing in situ and I'm so happy. I'm also so relieved. So I said at the beginning I would talk about how I deal with the pressure of making custom builds. And while I've touched on it throughout the video, it's quite simple. I'm as prepared as I can be. I use tools in the right manner. And I check as much as I can. But you can't relieve all the pressure. Sometimes you just need to hope for the best. I'd like to say a huge thank you to Wendy for the order. Wendy's a fan of mine. Yes, that's right, I do have one. And she watches the videos. So thank you very much, Wendy. It's much appreciated. I hope you get loads of use out of your cover. And for the rest of you, I hope you have a good time in your workshop. And I'll see you on the next one.